Welcome to Friendeavor, the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor. I'm your host, Danielle.
And I'm Kayla. Welcome back, guys.
And on this very rainy Monday evening.
It's so nice.
We're recording on a Monday, and it's so cozy. I just wish we had better, low-level lighting in here, but...
Yeah. If you could see me right now, I'm sprawled out, just lounging.
She's got pillows on top of her, underneath her, all around her. I'm sorry to interrupt your nap session with a recording, but we got to do what we got to do, right?
Right.
All right. So this week I named the episode "Small and Large Friend Groups," but really we're looking at the pros and cons of both types of groups. Mm-hmm. There's no exact science to friendship, right? We try to put parameters on it. We try to give some understanding, some guides to be able to filter thoughts through, to understand more about what friendship is and how it affects you. But in reality, there's no science to it.
Right.
It's an art. Mm-hmm. And, it's not something like you're good at it or you're not. You can be good at it naturally, or you could be one of the people who grows to be a better friend.
Right.
Which I think we should all have that goal.
Right.
But specifically, we're going to be looking at the pros and cons of small friend groups and then the pros and cons of large friend groups. And as you move through these, you might think, well, the pros of a small friend groups are the cons of the large ones and so on and so forth. But I think we have some unique perspective that's going to help break it down a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right, let's do this. All right, small friend groups. Our first pro we're going to talk about is you just kind of naturally have a stronger bond because you spend, I don't know if it's more time, but, and we're going to get way into this, so I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but the stronger bonds that you have are kind of what all these pros come together to create.
Right.
I consider myself part of a small friend group with a larger friend group surrounding me, but with who I spend my time with. And Kayla, you can speak to this as well, because I think that you kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
And we both have a smaller friend group. So how do you feel, before we get too deep into this, what are some of the pros and cons for you?
Yeah. So I definitely feel like you create stronger bonds just because, naturally more time is freed up.
Right.
So there's the time aspect. But there's also, I guess this kind of falls under time too, but there's just more vulnerability, deeper conversations because of the time. Right. So I think that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought about going pro con on these to kind of provide the balance. So I might sprinkle in a con before we get to the pros.
Yeah.
Same thing with the large friend group, because I don't want to present either one of these as being the right way of doing things. Okay. What works for you might not work for everyone else. And there's some people who need the larger friend group. They that's where they thrive. But we're going to dedicate time to that later on, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. But starting off, one of the pros of a smaller friend group is having a stronger bond. One of the cons is having limited perspectives.
Yeah. So
if you have a business idea, and you want to go bounce it off people, well, if you only have 2 or 3 people in who you consider your really tight-knit group, you're not going to get as much feedback or perspective on your idea because of your smaller circle.
Right. Yeah. I think that definitely makes sense, especially if you're in a small friend group of 2 sets of sisters.
Yeah.
Because 2, you have the same upbringing, and then the other 2 have the same upbringing. Although in my friend group, mine and Carly's upbringing is different than Chelsea and Bella's, and so they have a lot of different perspectives to share with us and us with them. But
it's primarily from the same source.
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Same for us.
Right.
So it's definitely something that you have to learn how to navigate. It's not impossible, but it should prompt you to expand that good friend tier a little bit more. If you find yourself in your best friend tier that you consider to be very, very tight, very small. Another pro is you are usually in a smaller friend group going to have a naturally more supportive environment because you're not going to be subject to groupthink. So if one person who's, and I use this term extremely loosely, more popular in the group sets the tone for what other people think, then you might not everyone might support you the same way as a smaller group does.
Right. Because support doesn't always look like agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely, I mean, I would call that a pro. Some people might not. Some people might think that's more of a, maybe not a con, but it's not a factor.
Yeah.
So it's possible. Going over to another con is you have of a smaller friend group is limited social opportunities. And for some people, this doesn't matter at all. They're perfectly satisfied with them and their friends being together all the time. I love being with my friends. I love it. Yeah. However, I have found myself like, oh man, if I feel like I need to go and interact with more people, just because I don't want to come across as someone who's only got 3 friends and therefore doesn't want to talk to anyone else.
Right.
So, I mean, the prime example, and we're in the large group, we'll be able to speak to this more, but so my past weekend, let me lay it out for you. On Friday night, I got a text from a friend who said, hey, what are you and your friends doing tonight? So she's a friend. She's a friend of our friend group, but she's not like, in the friend group, if you will. And I was like, oh, I'm just having dinner in a few minutes with my family, but no big plans. And she's like, well, would you 4 like to come over to my house tonight?
Wow.
She's like, my parents are out of town, and, it's just a chill night if you guys want to come over. And we're like, yeah, that'd be awesome, because we're not like, nope, we don't want to be with you. No, we love her, and we love spending time with her, but it would never have occurred to me, like, because I would never want it to be uncomfortable that if it was, she felt like it was us 4 and her. But that's how she presented it. She's like, hey, do you guys want to come over? So that was Friday night, and then Saturday night, I went to a huge party with my friend group of a bunch of Galentines. A Galentine's party that was a mix of a lot of people, a lot of friends, and I'm grateful that I did not have limited social interaction if I felt like I only had to be with those 3 all the time.
Exactly.
All right, the next pro, and this is a huge pro for me. If I was to rank these would definitely be in my top 1 or 2 pros of having a small friend group is less drama. By and large, you are going to have, when you have, the fewer people you have, the less drama you
right.
have.
I mean, there's fewer personalities, so like less likely to clash because there are fewer amounts of personalities. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, so I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. My thought is, like, okay, if you have a small friend group and one person is super dramatic, well, then this doesn't really apply to you. But overall, because you have less opinions, you have less swing on the personality scale, introverts, extroverts, all that stuff, you're just going to have less of the opinion side of drama, but you're also going to have the least events of drama.
Right.
How many combinations of drama can occur in the same 4 people? Or 5 people or 6 people or whatever you consider to be small.
Exactly.
It's like if your close friends are, if you only have one singular best friend, like the classic one best friend, I would imagine that duo has significantly less drama because it would be them against drama instead of them against each other. I mean, that's not sustainable for a friendship. I don't know what you think about that, but
yeah, that totally makes sense. I think just again going back to the time thing, a group of 2 friends has more time to communicate and to do all the healthy stuff that your friendships need to thrive and understand each other. So I just by default there's less drama.
Yeah. And it's harder to have miscommunications when you're only communicating with one person.
Right.
Or a
there's
smaller
no telephone.
Group of people. Yeah. There's no telephone. And I think back to last week when we talked about that story from our listener who, I feel like we're getting a lot of mileage out of that story because it's a classic example of just speak to each other. If you truly think that your friend did something that was harmful to you, why would you just let it fester? You know? And so in a smaller friend group, you've got more opportunity to deal with that kind of thing, but you also have less opportunity for even occur in the first place. Which kind of moves us into the next pro of a small friend group. And if you're taking notes, we have this laid out in a table, like a literal pro-con table. So pro on the left, con on the right. And we have them all listed. And since I'm bouncing around a little bit, I'm sorry if it is kind of hard to follow, but I will tell you what I'm about to talk about before we get into it. But another pro, and I think this is one of the biggest pros, is increased trust, because there is so much less likely of a chance for there to be the quote-unquote proverbial wolves in sheep's clothing in your friend group.
Yeah.
It's harder to hide bad intentions in a smaller group. The bigger the group, the bigger the herd. It's easier for people who don't really want to be a part, to be in there. And a large friend group doesn't have to be like the bosom buddies. Like, it could just be the people that you hang out with. We're not saying that every person in a larger friend group has to be on your best friend tier, but even the ones on the lower tiers that you spend less time with, they might not have the same interests or the same passions as you do, or the same dedication to crafting a long-lasting friendship. So the smaller the friend group, and again, we're going to get into a lot of pros of the large friend group as well. So if it seems like we're attacking large friend groups or promoting smaller friend groups, it's really, that's just how we started. But you have to recognize that there are pros and there are cons of each style. And so if you don't think that there's increased trust in a smaller friend group, or you have a counterpoint, feel free to email us. We'd love to hear other perspectives, because we don't want to fall into just groupthink of just ourselves, of what we think. So if you disagree, agree, have a thought, comment, you can email us, friendeavorpodcast@gmail.com, or DM us or text us or whatever. But I definitely think that is a pro of a small friend group.
Right. I think also, and we see this more in like teenage friend groups, or we should not see this in adult friend groups, but I think the larger the group, every time you guys get together, someone's not going to be able to show up. And a lot of times the one that doesn't show up gets talked about. I mean, it just happens.
It does.
I mean, we shouldn't see that in adult friend groups, but I think as teenagers that happened quite a bit, where like the person that didn't show up got talked about, just ended up by the end of the night talked about them, and that's so bad.
Yeah, that is so true. And I know, teenagers, that does happen, but I feel like a lot of teenage behavior gets disguised as you get older as an adult, but because you are an adult, then you think it's okay because you can acknowledge it. It's not free-flowing behavior issues. It's like dedicated behavior issues. You're like, I know I'm doing this, but because I'm aware of it, therefore it's okay, and I can put a limit on it. It happens as adults, and you really have to be on your guard, and not only on your guard for like your soul's sake and all this stuff, but to protect your friendships. What if you say something out of pocket to get a laugh and it gets back to your friend, and then you've done damage. Hopefully not irreparable damage, but damage, and that's one more conflict that you're gonna have to work through that you could have just avoided. Another pro to small friend groups is more meaningful interactions. Kayla talked about this, I've talked about this a little bit, and it kind of goes with the stronger bonds pro, because you can have more meaningful interactions. You've got the depth conversations that, talk about your hopes and dreams and your beliefs. We talk a lot about hopes and dreams as a example of a conversation with depth, but it's a lot about expressing what you believe and how you think. I think back on times of me and my friends, we got together to hang out and ended up talking about, what we wanted for if we were to get married one day, how we'd want to not set up our homes, not only like, physically with decorations, but also expectations and that is the depth, because you're learning about each other
Right.
way more than you ever could in a loud, noisy environment.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to strengthen your bond.
Yeah. And I think the more meaningful interactions also has to do with there's just more room for novelty in your small friend groups. Going on trips, it's a lot easier to coordinate that.
We're going to touch on that too in the large friend groups. Yeah.
Okay. Splurging and going to nice restaurants. We just did that in December, me and my group of 4. But I mean, you can't get a group of 10 to like go, hey, let's drop $50 per person tonight.
Yeah.
Like, also gifts. We got nice, meaningful gifts for each other. Whereas I feel like if I was in a large friend group, because of my budget, I would have the same budget but more people.
Yeah.
I probably would have just gotten everyone $5 gift cards.
Yeah.
So
that is so true, because and here's another thing about that. Say you have a group of 10 that you are your besties, and you are able to get a calendar, and you're able to figure it out. Okay, we're all able to do this, but a couple of people are going through a hard time right now, and so they feel bad for dragging the group down to, and I say dragging extremely loosely, to where they are able to be comfortable.
Right.
You know, they can afford to do what they want to do, right? But other people are ready to, like, you know, splurge and do it nice. Well, you've got way more people that you have to take into consideration.
Right.
And that is one of the cons of the large friend group. So in contrast, one of the pros of the small friend group is that you're able to cultivate environments to have the more meaningful interactions.
Right.
I cannot believe how absolutely delightfully cozy it is in here.
I know.
If there was a fireplace in here, we would never leave. So it's a good thing that there's not. Moving on to the next pro, you got a greater sense of reliability with the smaller group of people. And you might think, wait, no, that doesn't seem right, because you have more options in a larger friend group for people to rely on. But it's harder for more absurd situations to break up the reliability to happen in a smaller friend group. It's just like simple statistics. A smaller sample size means less variety of what could happen to break up reliability. And you have that. And if that's not something, if you would not be able to be in a small friend group right now and consider your friends reliable, that might be a skill that you guys want to collectively try to work on together. And you don't need to make a big deal about it and be like, all right, we're going to work on reliability. But especially if you're blessed with having the sibling situation like we are, then it's like almost a pact you can make together. Like, you know, and you got to recognize it within yourself too. If you're the one who's not being reliable, you know, guys, I've dropped the ball and I'm sorry, and I'm going to do better about that.
Yeah.
And if other people are feeling that way, or other people are struggling with reliability, you might be able to set the tone to change it for your friend group to be more successful.
I mean, I just had to do that last week. I think when we think of reliability, we think of like punctuality and keeping your commitments. But there's also another side, like, can I depend on you to be available?
Yeah.
And I just had to do that last week. I told my friends, hey guys, I want to be more available, and I'm sorry. Like, you know, we all have busy schedules, but like at the end of the day, you make time for things that you want to prioritize. And so that also goes into reliability, just answering their question, can I depend on you? You want to answer it with a yes.
To be fair, you are one of the busiest people I know. You keep the craziest schedule. So I'm glad we've fallen into a routine here, though.
Yes.
So I'm glad that worked out.
So great.
Which actually leads us into another pro. It's easier to coordinate plans.
Oh, yes.
When you're 100%. In a smaller
100%.
friend group, because, and we touched on this already, you are a group of 3 or a group of 4 or a group of 5. And you have, again, smaller sample size, less things that you have to deal with when trying to make plans. Short-term plans or long-term plans.
Right. We also see this not just in friend groups, but just in groups in general. We have, for example, we have a TRC marketing group chat, and it's just our marketing team for our church. And that has like a ton of people on it, like 20 people. And coordinating stuff on that, our leader had to end up making like a Google form and like, when is everyone available? But that versus the smaller sub chat we have of that for graphics team specifically, it's like 4 of us. And then our leader gets on there and says, hey, can everyone meet this day? And then boom, 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 the 3 of us text back, we're done.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's the same in friendships.
Absolutely. It really just goes back to the humanity aspect of it. I mean, it's not even like a relational aspect. It's just like, again, I said this twice already, but sample size, the smaller the group, the less variety you're going to have. And therefore, for the friendship side, the less of a hassle you're going to have when it comes to making plans. And I just want to touch on, but I want to bring kind of all these pros together into one, being able to have a deeper connection. Yeah. And we're going to talk about what the con is of that and the large friend group here in a minute. But all of these pros kind of work together to develop and build a deeper connection that theoretically should last. I don't know if longer is the right word, because none of us are expecting our friendships to crumble, right?
Right.
So I don't want to say longer, but it's just a deeper connection.
Yeah.
So you're going to be at a maybe even a stronger starting place than people in a larger friend group. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you think small friend groups, when you think pros and cons, that is definitely a large pro of this topic. Moving back over to the cons, because we kind of touched on those before we jumped over there, but one of the big ones that it's like a super easy trap to fall into, a con of a small friend group, is the risk of isolation.
For sure.
It is more than us four no more. That is like the cliquey mentality, where you, I don't know if you want it, but you're like seeking isolation and trying to show that you're better than people. But I think this is risking isolation, where you become unapproachable. Like if the 4 of us, intentionally isolated ourselves, that girl would have never texted us on Friday. Hang out. And it was so fun. She is a friend of ours. She is in my good friend tier, if you will. And we had a great time. We're all friends. It wasn't like she was entertaining us as a friend group. We were all hanging out together.
Right. That's great.
So if you have that us 4 no more mentality, or us 5, whatever the situation is, because some people might think that a small friend group is 10 and a large one is 20. It is all subjective.
Yeah.
But basically, as long as you are not limiting yourself intentionally, then and not only limiting yourself, but pushing yourselves to go out and make new friends and make mutual connections, because you need to have a strength. You need to have like a belief in your friendship. I have a little funny anecdote here that I'll talk about in the large friend group, but basically you have to be willing to make connections with other people, and you don't have to quote unquote invite them into your friend group, because it's not like a fraternity where you have to rush and haze them or whatever, but just be willing to hang out with other people, maybe not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah, right. I remember you talking about friendship at Chick Chat one time. It's our small group for teen girls at our church. And one of the questions that came up at the end was, what's the difference between having best friends and being cliquey? And there you go. There's the answer.
Yeah, I think the answer I gave there was intentionally making people not allowing people to hang out with you. It's okay if you have preferences. It's okay if you naturally gravitate to other people, but as soon as you intentionally, say that you don't want someone to be with you, you're forming a clique.
Right.
We have 2 more cons that we're going to be talking about in the small group section, but the next one is lack of experience variety. So this is a twofold con. One is lack of experience, that in a small friend group you guys might all have the same experiences, so you don't have different life experience to draw off of. And the other thing is lack of experiences together. So not only if you have same or similar life experience, but if you have same or similar interests, you're not going to be willing to try new things a whole lot. However, if one person of the friend group has, you know, a love for something else, they might try to get the friend group to do it with them, and you know what, they might love it, and then they've all experienced it together. Yeah. But if you have same or similar interests, you're not going to have as much variety in your experiences going forward.
Right. Yeah, we definitely see that. I think in my friend group, it's a group of 4, and I would say that would be a con in our friend group, because we have different interests, and we like expose each other to like different ways of thinking and different experiences. But since we've been friends for like so many years, we've kind of there's less variety there.
Yeah.
I think my sister loves hiking, and then the 3 of us are like kind of indifferent toward it. So
that is the opposite in my friend group. Those 3 love hiking, and I hate it. Yeah. So I'm like, oh my gosh, they want to do it all the time, it feels like.
Right. Yeah. So that's one thing, but yeah, definitely that falls under a con.
Yeah. And you have to force yourself to try new things. It's not like a requirement. It's not like, oh, you're gonna grow stagnant if you don't. But I mean, in the super long run, if you digress to the point where you have no variety, then yeah, you'll grow stagnant. But as long as you're doing the things you love, and if you try new things, like, you know, we did a paint night one time. None of us are particularly artsy. I loved it. They tolerated it. I wanted to do it again. We kind of did our own. We made our own, because those things are expensive. I don't know if you've ever been to a paint night at like a restaurant or something like that.
Like the guided one.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's like, that is, for you're paying for like the canvas, and it's like $50.
Ooh, yeah, you found a YouTube video.
Yeah, but no, it's fun. But anyways, that was something that we tried together that was really fun, and it gave us a little bit of a experience, variety and experience. The last con, this kind of goes in with the risk of isolation, but I want to talk about it from like a professional or a interactive standpoint, is limited networking. Again, small sample size, less people, less connections. Bigger friend group, those people know people who know people, and then you will have maybe a leg up on meeting new people or getting new opportunities that you wouldn't normally have in a small friend group.
Absolutely, for sure.
I think about, we did a episode, I can't remember which one, but you were talking about how you work for DYMC and you meet people who are Adam and Chris's associates because of your networking connection with them. Whereas if you were just extremely limited in your friend group, you wouldn't have that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's definitely a consideration. And again, we're not presenting this so that you decide on what type of friendship group that you're going to have, you know. Right. It's not like, okay, you sold me on having a small friend group, I'm going to go chop up my friend group. No, I'm just saying, we're just saying, like, this is what you need to navigate in the sense of cons or pros that you will see in your friend group.
Just be aware of the things that you need to detect. I mean, how are you going to detect it if you don't even know that it's an element?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. They say the first step to overcoming something is acknowledging that you need to overcome it in the first place. Yeah. So the first step to knowing what you're dealing with is just to know, you know, to acknowledge that there are other considerations to think of, which moves us into our large friend group pros and cons. And we're just going to take the last one that we just had and move right into this one. With the large friend group, you're going to have an extended social network. So not just professional, all that stuff, but you'll also have extended resources, extended skill sets. If you're in a friend group where someone is a chef, someone is a carpenter, someone is a plumber, someone is a teacher, you literally have access to skill sets in that larger friend group and larger resources. And then, of course, also the networking aspect too.
Yeah. My older sisters are in a larger friend group than we are. And there are just all kinds of people in that friend group. There's teachers, photographers, and so they get their photography for free, their friend sessions for free. Therapists, there are 2 therapists in that group, actually 3. that just all kinds of people. And I think it's great because when they go on trips and stuff, it's like there's the people that do the cooking and the people that do the cleaning. Like it's, yeah, a variety of skill sets.
Yeah. So that is definitely a pro. And then again, moving into another pro, more people to depend on, more social support.
Mm-hmm.
You've got more people to babysit your kids if you need them to.
My
You've
sisters.
got you've got more people to watch your house when you need it. You've got more people to just it's the community, it's the village. And I'm not saying in a small friend group that you don't have a village, but it's going to be more of like a familial village than it is a friendship village. But think of any sort of social support that you could need, not welfare support, but social support. And in a large friend group, you would probably be able to meet almost all those things. So
Yeah.
I think about people who have really small wedding parties, typically from a smaller friend group, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But the people with the bigger social support are going to have, bigger wedding parties, and you can't compare. Oh, here we go. It's coming. Are you ready for me to get on my soapbox?
Oh, yeah.
If you are a bride to be engaged, thinking about getting engaged or want to get engaged someday, you cannot compare your bridal experience to someone else's. It's not going to be the exact same. And I would caution you against becoming jealous or becoming sad at someone who seems to be getting this huge grandiose party or this huge grandiose experience. It's probably because the amount of people they have on deck helping.
Right.
If you come from a smaller friend group, you literally have less people to help pull this off. You have less financial support. It's not because they love you any less, but it's because of how
There are less people.
there's less people.
Yeah.
And it's unfair of people to expect a smaller friend group to carry the weight of a larger friend group. I think about your wedding, Kayla, and you've got a lot of sisters. You had Kara and I in it, which we would love to be a part of your day and Brett's day. But you also have cousins and you have friends. And so you had a larger wedding party than maybe the average person, especially the average person in the world.
Definitely.
But your bridal shower and all the things, the size house we were able to get for your bachelorette, all that stuff stems from having that larger group. That's not to say that if you don't have a large group that you should just throw in extra people to get what you want. Yeah. But if you want to get like a huge nice house, you can't expect your smaller friend group, bridal party, whatever it may be, to pull in $500 each instead of the $100 each or whatever we paid. So I don't know. It's just like I feel bad for brides who don't know what they're getting into. Not the marriage part of it, but the celebration part of it. Like, it's just different. It's just different. And be realistic on how your experience is going to go.
Right.
Because you literally just in a bigger friend group, you have more people to depend on and more social support.
And we're talking about this as a con, or sorry, we are talking about this as a pro, but that can be a con too, which we might get into.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that actually brings up a very good point. If you have that bigger wedding party because you think, oh, and we're using weddings as an example because we're talking about social support, but if you have that, you're going to have more opinions, more thoughts on how things should go. Yep. You might have people who are not willing to spend even the evenly split amount of money. I think of a wedding that I heard about several years ago back east, where the bride, she asked her friend to be her maid of honor, of course, and the maid of honor reached out to the party and was like, hey, what's a fair amount? I was thinking this much. And this one girl had like a meltdown because she's like, I can't pay that much. And to me, that was a super nominal asking amount that I heard. I wasn't even in the wedding, but I heard the story. And I was like, okay, so that put that girl in a position to feel like she needed to react poorly because it was not a peaceful exchange that they had. But, and this was a medium-sized party. It wasn't huge. It wasn't small. But it was like, because you had that person in there, therefore you had the varying opinion.
Yeah.
And it just affected the whole outcome of your deal.
Mm-hmm.
So don't think that just if you have a big wedding party, that it's going to be, oh, so much money and so much partying. And so, I'm going to get everything that I see other people have. You've also got a lot of opinions and a lot of
I
thoughts, processes to deal with.
guarantee you there's increased risk of drama.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too much on a rabbit trail here. We could dedicate an entire episode to this. But
Coming 2025.
right?
The wedding party.
I will say it is okay to be selective with your bridesmaids. Just like you're selective with your friendship pyramid, with your best friend tier, all that, you can be selective with your bridesmaids as well, because just it doesn't matter how functional and wonderful your friend group is. Weddings make non-problematic people problematic, and they make the problematic people just crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's okay to be selective with your bridesmaids.
And again, we are rabbit trailing, and I am not married, but I have witnessed a lot of weddings processes, and I see people who pick people to be in their wedding who I would think, and obviously I'm not an expert on them, but I would think that they're probably on their acquaintance tier. But because situation, the stars just so happen to align, they're in the most important day outside of receiving the Holy Ghost of their life.
Right.
Because they happen to be in the right place at the right time. I feel like you are setting yourself up for at least a very interesting time, if not a difficult time.
Yeah.
When you have people that you don't really know, or you don't, and then you got the whole obligation piece, and we should have Kara in here to talk about that, because she feels very strongly about obligation people. But going back to what we were talking about, the pro of having an extended social support comes along with the con of what we talked about, having more opinions, more thoughts, more drama, that you'll see. So in just the friendship aspect of it, the large group aspect, you will have the more perspectives and the more feedback outside of weddings and all that stuff. Like I said, if you have a business idea or you want support on an idea, so I would consider myself a part of a small friend group. However, my network of people that I love and trust, my good friends, is quite large. So when I had the idea for Friendeavor, when I had the idea for the mem cards, when I had the idea for 365 journal and the devotionals and all that stuff, I went to my larger network to get their thoughts and perspective on it. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I was able to sell significantly more devotionals that way because, Karina contracted me to be the curriculum provider for the school for the devotionals. Like, I never would have gotten that without my social circle in my community. And then on top of that, I've got a great relationship with a wonderful friend that happened to have the pro of being able to connect my stuff to that school. Adam and Krista were super supportive in even launching products and ideas and in the whole platform. So it's like, you've got people in your life who might not be the people that you're hanging out with every single Friday night, but you need to cultivate relationships with that good friend tier, because not just because you need things from them, but because of the perspectives and feedback and love and support that it provides.
For sure.
Now, I'm sure there's more pros and cons to these things that we're talking about, because you and I can't have the sole expertise on these things, so there's a lot more thoughts. But just to wrap up for the pro side of the large friend group, and we talked about this a little bit, but the shared resources and expenses, and I'm actually going to tag a con onto this as well, but if you want to have a beach vacation with a friend group, you can get a $3,000 a night beach house mansion if you're all chipping in $300.
Yeah.
Or you get to have maybe nicer or more expensive experiences because you're sharing more of the cost.
That's true.
Shared resources, like if I've heard of friend groups who all buy a rental house together, or like a vacation house, and then they they all split their time there. And you have those shared resources that you can have in a large friend group that you won't have in a small friend group. Which, on the con side, like Kayla already mentioned, it can be difficult logistically hanging out together.
Yeah.
Think of if you went into a restaurant just on a random Friday night and said, we'd like a table for 17, please.
And split the check 17 ways.
The check 17 ways. They're going to be like, get out of here and never come back. I mean, I could not imagine. It's hard enough to get a table in Elk Grove for 4 on a Friday night without a reservation or without like a wait list or something. So logistically, a larger friend group is harder because you either have to split the table or the check thing. I cannot. That would be a nightmare. I don't even want to think about that. That it's hard enough to get a check split 4 ways in a restaurant.
That is one of Brett's pet peeves.
Oh, it drives me nuts. I'm like, I know your little computer system can do it. You just don't want to.
Yep.
It's so annoying. But anyways, that is one of the cons. Logistically, traveling, you're trying to pick a destination. Oh, well, Susie's allergic to the sun, so we can't go to Aruba. But Benji's got a bum knee, so he can't hike up a castle. Oh, but Luann does not have a passport, so she can't go there.
Where are these names coming from? What on earth?
Walter, he can't get the time off work, so he can't go. This is all the same friend group, by the way. Anyways, it's just you hit snags in the road.
Yeah. For sure.
With the logistics of traveling, restaurants, all that stuff, carpooling. Yeah. Anyways. And then, of course, we talked about this a little bit. You've got more room for drama. You got more room for conflicts. And in a large friend group, you might be getting, within your own friend group, second or third hand information about yourself. What if something happened? What if a conflict happened and these two cons kind of go together, cliques and divisions within the group?
Yeah.
Subgroups within the group. And on the surface, you guys are all one big happy friend group. But then something happens, and then group A is like taking sides about it, and then, one person's telling one person like, well, she didn't like that she said that, and then she's got to go, and then it gets back to you and you're like, that's not even what happened. That is not even what happened. And so what are you gonna do, go sit around and hold hands and kumbaya and figure it out? Thankfully I don't know, because I'm in a smaller friend group and I'm totally happy with that. But you definitely, because the more people, the bigger sample size in this case, more room for drama, more room for conflicts, second, third, fourth hand information.
Yeah.
Things won't die out as quickly because you always got someone who's making it live.
Yeah.
I heard a story not that long ago about someone who confronted a person in their friend group about something that had happened a long time ago, because someone who was not even in their friend group told the person that someone within the friend group said something. Like, it was the most convoluted thing, and it was drama, pure drama, from someone who had relayed information about the friend group to another. I think of it kind of like a mug. So the cup of the mug is the friend group, and there's like the handle on the outside. So someone from outside the friend group passed on information from the top of the mug to the bottom of the mug, who's not even in the friend group. But it got all messed up inside the mug because the handle just, I know, I think weird, I think visually, but
that was quite the visual.
It's like, you know what I'm talking about, like the mug that so I'm gonna draw a diagram of that and put it on stories.
I think it's just like, as mature and as adultish and well seasoned in friendships as you are, I just think it's inevitable. Like, if you have a large friend group, that is going to happen. Miscommunication, second, third hand info. I mean, it's just going to happen.
Yeah. And the divisions and the cliques will be the demise of a large friend group. It's just how it is. And if your large friend group is on your friend tier, I don't know how to say this without sounding like snobby, but if you've got best friends within your larger friend group, then I think that you're actually part of a smaller friend group.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time with a bigger group.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole different other pros and cons and intermingling and all that stuff. But that actually leads us unintentionally, I'll have you know, this it leads us into our next con. If you have a difficulty maintaining the same level of friendship with everyone in the group.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just think of it logistically. If you have all your friends, say you're a friend group of 10, over to your house, are you all 10 having the exact same conversation at the same time?
Right.
How is everyone getting a chance to speak? How are you
Mm-hmm.
learning about everyone?
Mm-hmm.
How are you catching up on everyone's lives?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how does that work? I don't even know.
Yeah. And if you like have the availability to go out one-on-one with these people, but you have a group of 10 friends, you're taking 10 weeks to get through all your
Yeah.
one-on-ones.
Yeah. I remember when I was between the ages of like 12 to 16, I didn't realize this at the time, but I was in a friend group of me, Brett, and then friends who were actually his age, but the five of us would hang out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They would be at our house every weekend, and even though they were 4 or 5 years older than me, I still felt super connected to them because we were all having shared experience. Now, the difference is at that age, we were not learning about each other because we already knew each other extremely well. We had grown up together, and we were at that age group at that time at that age, we were so focused on having fun. That was all of our experiences, was just having fun together. And so as a small group of 5, because I still consider 5 to be a pretty small friend group, we didn't have to worry about maintaining, I didn't need to go get to know the older friends so well because I'd known them my entire life.
Yeah.
But the older you are, and if you've spent less time, like if you haven't known them your whole life, you're still getting to know these people in a relationship manner.
Mm-hmm.
So in a bigger friend group, you will have difficulty maintaining the same level of friendship with everyone in that group.
Right.
Large friend groups can also be time consuming.
For sure.
Because you're just going to spend more time trying to figure out plans. And I mean, you talked about how you want to become more available. Well, if you drop in the group chat, hey, are you guys available on the 10th? And it takes an hour for everyone to get back. And like one person says, oh, I'm not. Well, how much more is that multiplied by a group chat of like 15 people?
Right.
It's just going to be more time consuming.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, again, just with any large group versus small group, not even friendships. We have a pretty large group of Bible quizzers this year, which I'm very thankful for. But we have our first tournament this weekend, and I told everyone, meet at the church at 10:40, and I don't plan on leaving until 11. But there are so many people that need to meet there. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, no, we're going to meet there at 10:40. Versus if it were last year when we only had like 2 quizzers, I might have told them like, get at the church at 10:55, we'll leave at 11.
Yeah.
You know? So, same thing with friend groups. And the reason I go back to like other groups that are not friends is because I can't really relate to the big friend group thing.
Yeah,
so
me either.
Those are my experiences.
That's why I mentioned the other friend group when I was younger. Like, because it's the same things I experience now. However, because we were young, our focus was just different, you know? So being a part of a small friend group now as an adult versus when you're a teenager, it's different, but it doesn't have the same cons as a large friend group now, like the time consuming and all that stuff. All right, we got one last con of large friend groups, and we're going to wrap up with this. In large friend groups, because you have diversity of experience and professions and all the things, you will have pressure to put on certain appearances or maintain appearances. We talked about this a little bit with like the restaurant thing and like, you know, what people are able to do. But in a large friend group, you have, even if it's not an external pressure, it's an internal pressure of like this keeping up with the Joneses thing. One friend got a new car, or maybe even 2 friends because they're doing well. And it's like, oh, man, do I need a new car?
I have a 2005 Hyundai
Yeah.
Elantra.
And I'm like, oh man, they got a really cool job. Or, wow, they're really successful. They got a really cool degree. Do I need to, even if you're perfectly stable in your job or whatever, you're not going to find that in smaller groups. I don't know. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So if you are in a large friend group and everyone is able to afford a Gucci purse, but you're not, you might feel a little bad for yourself. I know people who buy extravagant gifts for people because they can afford them, and then people feel like they need to buy extravagant gifts for the people who bought them for them who can't afford them, and then find themselves in a position where they're being a bad steward with their money.
Right.
Because they're not in the position to be buying $200 gifts. But because the pressure to conform, or not even to conform, but just to maintain an appearance, really is affecting them badly. And it's going to affect them a lot more in a lot other areas of their life because they can't control that impulse. And that's not to say that every large friend group is like that. But if you find yourself feeling pressure to conform or perform or maintain appearances, think to yourself about what the other consequences are to this action. If I go out and get a new car because most of my other people are getting a new car and I need to compare, how is a $700 a month car payment going to affect you? Are you going to be able to actually meet your goals? Are you going to go on that vacation with everyone else, or are you going to have to stay home because you have to work a second or third job to keep up with the materialism?
Right.
Hopefully your friend group is strong enough that they would not put any extra pressure on you for that kind of stuff, but just be very careful. Don't get yourself caught up in a position where you'll be hurting other aspects of your life just for your friendships.
Right.
Well, that was the pros and cons of small and large friend groups. Thank you so much for stopping by this week. Kayla and I are so grateful. We just surpassed 600 plays on Spotify, so we're thrilled about that. And we would love it if you wouldn't mind sharing this podcast with a friend. It doesn't have to be this episode. If you don't want to say, hey, there's cons in our friend group, if you don't want to pass that information along, go find one that resonated with you and send it to your friends. We would love to be able to help more people, and there's only so many people we can reach on our own. So the best way is to use your network in your friend group to help spread the word about a delightfully upbeat and positive podcast like this one, where all we really want to do is just help people. So
and tune in with your friends too, you guys.
Oh, that would be awesome.
So
we
fun.
need to have our friends over. I'll buy a couple more mics and we can just set them up in here. But yeah, listen with your friends, and of course if you have questions, you're always welcome to reach out. And then if another way you can help support is to leave us a review, give us a 5-star rating, because that'll help push it out to other people. And this is really not for us. It's really just to help spread the word to other people, because we're not earning any money off of this. We just do it because we think it's beneficial for someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone can benefit from strengthening their friendships, anyone of any age.
That's what this whole platform is about. So thank you so much for stopping by this week. We will see you next week on Friendeavor.
See you next week.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.